Start.
Uh, Welcome everyone to the day two of 1 week workshop on research and academic publication and ethics, organized by Economic Study and Research Center, Department of Economics, Bahona College, in collaboration with IQAC Bahona College and sponsored by Jorhat Development Authority. Today's session will be on how to select journal for publication. And for this, we have with us today Dr. Amarjyoti Mahanta, Sir, Associate Professor, Department of Economics, Dibrugarh University. Sir's area of interest is demography and population studies, international economics. Mahanta Sir has already created a niche for himself with credible publications and research projects. We are delighted to have him today as our honored speaker. Welcome, sir, to the workshop. And with these few words, I would like to hand over the session to Mahanta, sir. Sir, please.
Thank you very much. Uh, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you. Uh,
Yes,
First of all, I would like to welcome all the participants of this workshop to this session. At the outset, I would like to offer my thanks to the entire organizing committee of this workshop. To be precise, I thank Principal of Bahana College and the two coordinators of this workshop, and also uh, my respected Dr. Rafiq Ahmed for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to talk to this wonderful galaxy of research workers. Uh, I have been told that participants in this workshop are from varied disciplines. I anticipate that some of the participants of this workshop have already got immense experience in research works. They might be having significant number of publications to their credit. I equally anticipate that some of the participants of this workshop are totally fresh. They may not have, uh, research experience. They have just started to take up this sort of academic endeavors. So believing that, uh, I will prefer to be very simple in my deliberation. Uh, what I will talk would be very, very simple, very fundamental things I will be talking. And some of the things that I will be talking would be very, very, familiar to those who have already got ample research experience. Therefore, I, at the outset, beg pardon for being so simple. Some of my presentations may not be, uh, interesting for the experienced researchers, but as I anticipate that participants would be of a mixed category, therefore, I have preferred to be, very simple. Um, I have a small presentation. Let me share my screen with you. Is my presentation coming?
Yes, sir.
Could you see the entire
Yes, sir, it
screen
is
now?
visible.
Entire screen, could you see?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Okay, thank you. I request to give some
Yes,
sort
sir.
of feedback in between so that I can feel that I am still connected. Sometimes it happens that I don't get any feedback from the other side, and in that case, I used to believe that I'm not connected. So please give me some feedback in between so that I feel that I'm still connected. Okay.
Of
Okay,
course,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Thank you. So as I said uh, initially that I'll be very, simple in my presentation. Actually, I was told to speak on selection of journal for publication. Uh, I have rather chosen to speak something on the stage prior to the publication. That is how to prepare a research paper, because to have our paper published, we have to make our paper publishable. And that is why I would like to say something about the authoring a research paper, and then I will come to how can we try for having the paper published. So both preparation as well as publication, both sides I have preferred to take. And as I will say, speak on very small things, therefore I have added uh, a tag to my title as some fundamentals. So I again say that it may not be interesting for the experienced researchers. Let me start with a simple question. What may be the components of a research paper? See, I believe that a research paper is equivalent to a piece of dissertation or a piece of PhD thesis. Why? Because research is nothing but a systematic investigation on a particular research problem based on facts, which ultimately leads to either creation of a new knowledge or it adds to the existing stock of knowledge. So research is a scientific effort in finding solution to a particular research problem, and this is based on certain facts, evidences. And through this entire process of investigation, what we do is that we create some new knowledge or we add to the existing body of knowledge. So as it is a systematic scientific investigation of a particular issue, therefore it has to have some procedures, certain steps will have to follow while conducting therefore a research. And these systematic process steps actually make a research paper different from an article. An article may not have some scientific steps, systematic procedures, but that we do not have in case of research paper. If we want to make a paper, if we want to write a research paper, definitely it should have some systematic steps. So what are these components of a research paper? Let us see this. This is just the outline of the different components of a research paper. It does not necessarily mean that these components that I am showing have to be presented in the paper in this strict form of order, from research problem to research problem within a discipline, or from one discipline to the other discipline. There may be variations in the ordering of these different components. But basically, what uh, we have seen in good quality journals, that these are the basic things that a research paper must have. So usually, a research paper starts with an introduction, then a separate segment may be added as literature review, objectives of the paper, then schematic organization, theoretical framework, hypothesis or research questions, then the methodology, the data, the research methods that are adopted in solving the research problem, and then what are the findings, what are the results, and then after stating the results, we'll have to have a discussion over the results, over the findings, and at last we make a conclusion. These are the broad things that usually one would expect to have in a research paper. Uh, I repeat that from discipline to discipline, these components may vary. Ordering of these components may vary. Even within a discipline, from research issue to research issue, from objective to objective, articulation of the research paper may vary. Now let us have a detailed discussion on these different components of a research paper. Introduction. This is the first thing with which any research work begins. In the introduction part, what we do, we introduce the issue of research. We state the research problem. In the introduction phase, we'll have to be a bit careful, because we need to bring the research issue into the context. In the introduction phase, therefore, we'll have to be very precise. We should target the research issue. Introduction segments should be written in a way so that we can directly hit the research problem. We have to bring the issue of research into the context. While going through the introduction, a reader must understand that what the paper is going to do, what is the relevance of this study. So in the introduction phase, therefore, is we establish the relevance of the study. So how can we establish the relevance of the study? How can we justify that the research problem is really important, the issue is really researchable? How can we justify that? For that, we can do two things. Firstly, we can see what is happening into the core issue of research. In research problem, what we do, actually research problem is nothing but a difficulty, the issue which needs a solution. So in the introduction phase, therefore, we should try to state the research problem in a way that we can bring the research issue into the context at the very outset. For that, we can firstly analyze what is happening into the issue of research. And for that, we can analyze the facts that that have already happened, what is going on, these things we can do. Even then, when our research work is based on primary data, we should we should collect and analyze the secondary data relating to the research issue. The paper may be based on some primary facts. Even then, we should collect some secondary data, analyze these data so that we can understand what is happening on that particular research issue. So in that way, we can establish first the relevance of the study. And second way is to cite some works which have already been done on that particular research issue. So available empirical studies may be referred, may be cited, so that we can understand what is the extent of development in that particular research issue. So having justified the research issue, we also should justify the selection of the area of research. Why a particular area is taken for the work, that has also to be justified. So all these things we do in the introduction phase. So this is that we should, in the introduction phase, try to hit the research problem directly. We should bring the research problem into the context in this section, and for that we can refer to the studies which have been done already in that particular issue, and also we should collect and analyze some of the facts from the secondary data, even then when the work is based on primary data. And with that, we conclude the introduction, this section. Secondly, the literature review. It's not mandatory that one has to have a particular section like literature review in the research paper. But literature review has to be done. You may not have a separate section in your paper as literature review, but a review of literature has to be done. So if you do not have a separate segment on literature review, where you will cover up the literature available already in that particular issue, that has to be incorporated into the introduction phase. As I showed earlier, that the relevance of the study can be justified by referring to some of the empirical studies. So here we can cover up the already done works on that particular research issue. And this is very important. Literature review is very important because it helps us to find out the development of the subject. If we take a particular issue, say for example, say status of human development. As I belong to the discipline of economics, some of the things, some of the examples may be directed in that angle also. See, suppose we want to examine the status of human development in a particular population. So we, through the literature review, can know what is the development in the subject. Means what developments have taken place in the entire issue of human development. And for that, we can review some of the theoretical works, some of the works based on empirical evidences. So both theoretical and empirical works should be reviewed. And when we do that, we come to know what is the development till now in that particular issue of research. It helps us, literature review helps us to understand the theoretical development of the subject. So without having the theoretical considerations that underpin the research problem, we perhaps will not be able to precisely do the research in a justifiable manner. Therefore, we need to understand the theories behind the uh, research issue. For example, if suppose we want to see the labor force participation, I'm taking a very simple kind of example. Suppose we want to see the labor force participation, that too of the female, suppose. So in that research issue, definitely we'll have to go through the theories. We'll have to go through the theories of labor economics. So without knowing these theories that underpin the research problem, perhaps we'll not be able to do the research in a justifiable manner. So literature review helps us to understand what development uh, has taken place theoretically in that particular issue of research. And it therefore guides us to lead the research work in the proper perspective. So, as I said, that we should review the literature on both theoretical and empirical works. So, theoretical literature review helps us to know the entire theories behind the research issue. Also, we should review the methodological part. When we go through the literature review, we understand what are the methods or analytical tools that have been taken to address that sort of a research problem. Say, for example, I said about human development. So what methods have been applied to examine the status of human development? Many methods are there. UNDP has given one method. Many researchers have used different, types of with different methods to quantify the status of human development. So, what are the methodological issues? What are the analytical tools that have been already applied in that sort of a research problem? We can understand through this literature review. A very important uh, advantage of going through the literature is that it helps to identify the research gap. Why do we uh, take a research work? Why do we take a research work? Because we find that there is a research problem, and that problem has to be, solved. So existing knowledge may not be sufficient to solve that sort of a research problem. And we take a research work so that we can solve the research problem, and thereby we can fill the gap in the research work. So what works have been done, which works are left to be done so that a new research problem can be solved. That we can understand from the literature review. So literature review is extremely helpful to identify the research gap, and that identification of the research gap helps us enormously to formulate the research problem. Then literature review also helps us to compare the findings of our works with the works already done. Say, for example, as I mentioned, human development. Suppose I have done a research on the human development of a particular population, particular society or population, a particular population group. So I have to now compare my findings, research findings, with the findings of some other researchers. So literacy review helps us to know what are the findings of the past works, and we can correlate these past findings to the findings of the current research. So it helps us to make a comparison of our research work. So without comparison of research findings to the other findings or other past studies, perhaps will not be able to know precisely what is the current state of affairs in the particular population or particular society in that particular research issue. Then, having identified the research gap, we can now go for framing the research objectives. The research objectives should be set in a way so that it leads to solution of the research problem. The objectives of the research work must be very precisely and simply stated. My point is that the research objectives should be very, very simple, and these should be framed in a way so that this leads to the solution of our research problem. And while stating the research objectives, we have to be a bit precise, in the sense that using of words. For example, if you say that to understand the status of human development, I think it would not be a precise one, because to what extent you have understood the status of human development, to what extent the reader of your work has understood the status of human development, this is not clear. Therefore, you can say to explore, to assess, right? This use of word has to be proper. So that is why I say that the objectives should be very, very precise and simple, and must be rational. The objectives taken should be capable of fulfillment. Don't take some very ambitious kind of objectives. The objectives taken should be feasible. Feasible in the sense that these objectives, you may have financial, you must be having, you must have financial feasibility, you must have technical feasibility, you must have time feasibility. So don't take those sorts of objectives which are not feasible financially. Fulfillment of some objectives may not be possible. Technically, that may not be possible. Suppose you are a single researcher, but the issue that you have taken needs a multidisciplinary approach. So you may not be technically so expert to take that sort of objective. So technical feasibility has to be taken into consideration. Time frame. A particular objective may require varied data, varied information, right? That may require substantial amount of time. So time feasibility is also there. So considering all these technical, financial, time, all these feasibility, we need to take the rational objectives. The objectives should be framed in a rational manner. And then these objectives should be logically sequenced. The objective which should come first should be placed first. The objective which should be taken in a later phase should be placed in that sequence. So that is what I mean, logically sequenced. And uh, we should not take too many objectives for a research paper. Only one objective may be enough to to address for a particular research paper. If it is a dissertation, if it is a PhD thesis, then the number of objectives may be more. But a single work that is done for a research paper should not take many objectives. Then schematic organization. What is this? This is a tentative outline of the paper. Uh, a paper may be presented in different sections, like say section 1 introduction, section 2 objectives, section 3 say hypothesis or research questions, section 4 methodology, section 5 uh, to findings, section 6 discussion, then conclusion. In that way, in different sections and in subsections, a paper may be presented. And sometimes you may not have that sort of section like introduction or objectives, uh, the things that I already said. In that order, you may not have different section. Sometimes it may be written as uh, section 1, section 2, section 3. In 2 or 3 sections, entire uh, paper may be authored, may be articulated. So without giving any name to a particular section. So in that case, you have to explain what you will do in section 1, what is there in section 2, what is there and there in the section 3. So without giving a specific name to a particular section, you can say that the paper is presented in 3 sections, where in the section number 1 this is written, section number 2 comprises this, section 3 deals with this. That in that way you can explain the schematic. The schematic organization can be framed. The schematic organization should be done in a sequence. It should enable the reader to understand the research problem, findings, and solution. So a logical sequencing of different sections has to be there, and it helps the reader to understand the entire research problem and the findings of the study and what solutions are put forward for the framed research problem. After that, next component is theoretical framework. Uh, Good quality journals always ask a strong theoretical framework. A strong theoretical framework is very essential. As I said, quality journals always ask for a strong theoretical framework. This is required especially in case of cause-effect relation. When in our research work we wish to establish the cause-effect relationship among the variables, we need to have a very strong theoretical framework. Uh, for example, suppose some of you may know that regression analysis. Is there anyone who knows what is regression analysis? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So see, what is regression analysis? In a regression analysis, what we do, we take a dependent variable and we take some independent variables. If it is a multiple regression analysis, and we predict the effect of the independent variables on the dependent variable, right? For example, if we take agricultural productivity as the dependent variable and the independent variable, suppose irrigation, application of machineries, or high yielding variety seeds, these are suppose independent variables. So what is the effect of these independent variables on the dependent variables, say agricultural productivity, right? So this is what we do in our regression analysis, very in a very simple way. This is what we do in a regression analysis of a multiple uh, framework, multivariate regression framework. So when we uh, try to establish the cause effect relationship, we need to have a strong theoretical framework. What is the causal link between the independent variable and the dependent variable? What is the, suppose A is the dependent variable, X, Y, Z, these are the independent variable. So how X affects A, how Y affects A, how Z affects A. So without presenting the causal relationship between these three independent variables X, Y, Z on the dependent variable A, we will not be able to predict the relationship in a justified way. So this theoretical framework is very essential for the kind of analysis, for the kind of research work that intended to establish the cause-effect relationship between the variables. And this theoretical framework is essential for model building. Say a regression model is framed, as I said, regression model is framed. Without a valid theoretical framework, we cannot frame a model. A model without a theoretical framework is unscientific. So the kind of research that tries to establish relationship, particularly the cause-effect kind of relationship between or among the variables, a strong theoretical framework is required. And as I said, while trying to find a solution to a research problem, we need to go through the theories that underpin the research issue. So without knowing the theories, we will not be able to proceed. So a strong theoretical framework is required, even then when we do not go for cause-effect relationship. Because without theories, we will not be able to test what is empirically happening. Then hypothesis. Based on the theoretical framework, now we can frame some hypothesis. So hypothesis is a very simple statement that we predict, that we expect, and we test. This is a simple statement of our prediction, of our expectation that we frame for testing. So it is a prior explanation for a phenomenon. And as this is our expectation, this is our anticipation, prediction, and that we take up for testing. Therefore, hypothesis provides a basis of further research. We test the hypothesis. What is hypothesis? A very simple statement on our prediction, expectation, anticipation on certain, certain aspects. So we test it through some research methods. And when we test it, we produce a theory. Even then, when the hypothesis is rejected, we produce a theory. Generally, we take up two hypotheses, null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. This is more meaningful in social science research. We take a null hypothesis which predicts that there is no relationship between the variables, and the alternative to this null hypothesis is the alternative hypothesis that says that there is a relationship between the variables. So two hypotheses are usually taken for comparison. How to formulate the research hypothesis? What are the key requirements of a research hypothesis? Firstly, the research hypothesis should be precise. It should be unambiguous. The research hypothesis should be very, very clear. It should be a clear statement of our prediction. If we say that there is no relationship between after sale services and the amount of sales. So this is a clear, statement of our prediction that there is no relationship between after sale service and the total sales. This is a clear statement. But if we say that we try to understand, is there any relation between after sale service and the total amount of sale, this cannot be a good hypothesis. So there is no relationship, or there is a relationship between the variables. It should be stated without any ambiguity. Research hypothesis should not be a statement of a fact. Means what is already established, what we know that this is true, this happens, that sort of a statement we should not take. Right? Say when price goes up, demand falls. This is established that when price goes up, demand falls. Price of a commodity, when goes up, its demand falls. This is quite established, and that is why we call it as law of demand. Law. We do not just say it as a theory. So this is known that when price goes up, demand falls. So in that event, if you take a hypothesis that there is no relationship between price and quantity demanded, perhaps it will not be a good hypothesis, because what is a fact, what is already known, that you are nullifying through this sort of a null hypothesis. So the established facts should not be taken again for testing. It should be based on reasoning. There has to be a reason behind the taking of the hypothesis. There is no relationship between X and Y, right? Or there is a relationship between X and Y. So why do we predict that there is a relationship or there is not a relationship between X and Y? So this should be based on some reasons. A hypothesis to be scientific requires that one can test it. Testability is a very important requirement of a hypothesis. Once you take a hypothesis, you'll have to test it. You'll have to either accept the hypothesis or reject the hypothesis. So if you take a hypothesis which cannot be tested, perhaps it would not be a hypothesis then. If you take a statement that you cannot test through some research method, so through some statistical method, perhaps it would not be a hypothesis. So once a hypothesis is taken, it has to be tested. It should be capable of being tested. A single study need not take up many. As like objectives, I say that a single study should not take many objectives like that. A single study should not take up many. Either null or alternative hypothesis should be taken, not a combination of both null and alternative hypothesis. As I said, that once you take hypothesis, you should be able to test the hypothesis. If you are not in a position to test your statement, it would not qualify as a hypothesis. So in that situation where you you cannot test the hypothesis, you go for a research question. Right? For example, are the socio-cultural economic characteristics of the society responsible for child labor? This is a research question. If you convert it into a hypothesis, like say, there is no relationship between socio-cultural and economic characteristics and the child labor. This should be not a clear, unambiguous hypothesis. And you will not be in a position to test the hypothesis. You will not be in a position to accept or reject the hypothesis, because you have taken many things: social, cultural, economic characteristics, and the child labor. It may so happen that in the findings part, you have got that social variables have influence on child labor, but cultural variables do not have, or socio-cultural variables do not have influence, but economic variables have influence. So in that case, you will not be in a position to either accept the hypothesis or reject the hypothesis, because you say that socio-cultural economic characteristics do not have influence on child labor. You will not be able to state whether your hypothesis is accepted or rejected. So in that case, better to go with a research question. So we have to remember that once we take research hypothesis, we should be able to test it, and after testing the hypothesis, we should be able to state whether the research hypothesis is rejected or accepted. If we make some prediction which we cannot test or which we cannot finally accept or reject, better not to take that sort of statement in the hypothesis stream. Rather, we should go with some research question. Then the methodology. Next important part or requirement component of a research paper is the data and methodology. Research is always based on facts, as I said in the beginning. So we have to have some facts, we have to have some data. So we'll have to first identify the data source. We can have the required data for addressing the research problem from two sources: secondary and primary. Secondary data are already published or semi-published, semi-processed form, or in complete public domain. These are available, and one needs to collect these data and then process these data towards solution of the research problem. While taking secondary data, we have to be a bit careful regarding the authenticity of the data. Today we have access to data because of the technological advantages. We have internet. From different websites we can collect the data, this secondary data. in social science, this is more relevant. But while collecting secondary data, we'll have to be careful regarding the authenticity of the data. We'll have to identify the authentic source of data. Say, for example, if we need, say, information on India's trade, then perhaps we can go through the IMF, WTO, or Indian, government data. So, authentic sources of data we'll have to identify. This is very important in case of secondary data. If the second source of data is the primary data, and we can have this primary data from different sources through observation of the researcher. One can collect the data required for the study, or the researcher may collect data by personal interview with an interview schedule. One can collect the data, or else the researcher can send this questionnaire to different respondents through mail, and can collect the data through this mail questionnaire. A researcher can make some focused group discussion. A focus group may be organized in the area of research, which will comprise of some persons who are familiar to the research issue, and with that group, some discussion on that particular research problem may be held, and through this focus group discussion, the very important insights to the research problem can be known. So these are different sources of primary data, which the researcher collects afresh. Secondary data, researcher does not collect. These are already there in the public domain, either in complete process form or in the semi-process form, and the researcher collects this data towards the fulfillment of the research objectives. Primary data, these are collected by the researcher himself or herself through different ways. If the research work is based on some primary data, we have to have a very strong sampling design. Primary data are collected from some respondents. So a single researcher cannot go for a census in which each and every unit of the universe, each and every unit of the population is collected, and where to collect the information. That cannot be done by a single researcher because it is costly, time-taking. Therefore, usually sample surveys are done. So when we collect data through sample survey, we need to have a strong sampling design. How finally we derive the samples. So a strong sample design is required. Wherever wherever we want, we cannot collect the sample. We cannot draw the samples. We have to frame an appropriate method for finally choosing a sample towards collection of data. That we call as the sample design. Sample design should be framed as per the requirement of the study, and usually a multi-stage sampling framework is taken. Many a times we have seen that samples are drawn through a multi-stage sampling technique, both purposive and random. What is done in multi-stage sampling? We draw the samples at different stages. First, we identify some, say, samples, and from these samples, then again we come to the next step, and then again we'll draw some samples, and finally, through some certain stages, we draw the ultimate unit of observation that we call as a multi-stage sampling technique. What I said was related to the data. Then second part of the methodology is regarding the use of analytical methods. We have collected the data. Now we'll have to analyze the data by applying some research methods. So what methods for analysis have been taken? That has to be stated in the methodology part also. So specification of the methods that will fulfill the objective. So we need to choose right kind of research method for fulfilling our research objectives. We need to specifically mention what same method is used for fulfillment of the first objective, what method we have taken for fulfilling the second objective, and so on and so forth. Again, we'll have to specify what method is used to test the hypothesis. If we do not have a hypothesis, we'll have a research question. In lieu of research hypothesis, we can take research question. So if we take research question, then again we will have to specify what methods are used in answering the research questions. After mentioning the methods for analysis of the collected data, next step is the significant step, is to find out the results. So next component in a research paper is results or the findings. The results or the findings of the study need to be very clearly stated. We should always remember our research objectives. We should always remember our research problem. So findings should be presented. Results of our analysis should be presented in a way so that we can fulfill our objectives, so that we can provide a solution to our research problem. To substantiate, to present our research findings, we can use some tables, we can use some figures, graphs, wherever required. And one thing I would like to mention, that tables should be framed in a self-explanatory manner. One important characteristic of tables and figures that they are self-explanatory. Without going through the written part, just looking at the table, one should be able to know what is there. So to understand the table, one should not be compelled again to go through the description, discussion of the findings of the tables. Just looking at the table, one should be able to know what are the findings. So prepare the tables and figures in a self-explanatory nature. And the results of our study should be compared with the results of the past studies. While stating on literature review, I said that the literature review helps us to compare our findings to the past findings. So the results that we find by analyzing the data will have to compare with some findings, results of the past work. Then discussion. Sometimes results and discussion, these are written together, and in some journals it has been seen that results are presented in a different section and this is followed by a discussion section. But in some journals, results and discussion, these are presented together. Uh, we have to, in the discussion part, we have to provide explanation to the findings. Whatever we have observed by analyzing the data, we'll have to provide explanation to the findings. We'll have to substantiate the findings by providing sufficient explanation. The theories that underpin the findings may be referred. Already we have uh, made a detailed survey of the existing literature, and doing so, we have understood what are the theories behind the research problem. We have also constructed a theoretical framework. Now it's time to use these theories to explain our research findings. So the uh, findings of our research have to be explained by referring to the theories. Discussion should be made in a way so that it leads to solution of the research problem. We took the research issue because we found that there was a problem. Now we have analyzed all the data, and now we'll have to provide some solution to the research problem. Without providing a solution to the research problem, the research would not be, it would not be complete. And lastly, conclusion. After making discussion over our research findings, it's time to make a conclusion. In the conclusion part, what we do, we very precisely, in a very brief way, we state the key findings of our research. As I said, we took up the issue because there was a problem. Now we'll have to find some solution. We'll have to provide a solution to the research problem. And there lies the contribution of our research work. So in the conclusion part, we'll have to look into how our research work has contributed. Our research work can contribute something towards policy. Our research work can contribute something to the theory, or it can contribute to the methodology. So what is the contribution of our research work, right? How we have solved the research problem, or what we need to do to solve, to get out of that research problem. That is the policy prescription. We need to see to what extent our research work has contributed to the development of the subject in terms of theory or in terms of methodology. And then another thing that one can incorporate in the conclusion part is the identification of new areas for further research. A single research may not be enough to find the entire domain of solution to the broad research problem. So while going through the research problem, you might have found that some new areas are there which needs further research. So in the conclusion part, one can also say that these are the areas which required further intensive study. So in that way, we make a conclusion of our research work. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. So we have now prepared the research paper. It's now time to have our research work published. publication today has become very easy because today we have thousands of journals. Earlier we had only print journals. Yeah. Now we have many journals because of this open access model. We have online journals also, which earlier people did not have. Earlier, one has to write a research paper, and then these papers have to be communicated through postal, means. But today we have uh, digital technology of submitting a research paper. We have digital technology for reviewing a research paper, modifying a research paper. We have a online manuscript submission system. All these things are there. So thanks to this entire development of digital technologies, and that is why publication has become easy. Earlier these developments were not there, therefore people had to uh, faced a lot of difficulties in getting their research works published. But today, because of these technological developments, it has become very easy for one to have their research work published in good quality journals. Of course, we have many journals today. Publication has become easy, but at the same time, publication has become confusing, problematic, and sometimes publication does not give us the credit also. Why? Because we have predatory journals, pseudo journals, clone journals, questionable journals. We have put a lot of effort in developing an idea. We have put a lot of effort, time in converting that idea into some, concepts, theories. Then we have collected data, analyzed data, and finally, with paying all these efforts, we have written a research paper. And we should get the ultimate reward of this entire academic effort through some publication. But if we do not get a credit out of this publication, then entire effort will be lost. And this can happen when we get our research work published in a predatory journals. So these predatory journals prioritize their self-interest. Mostly their interest is commercial. They uh, they provide some misleading information that this is a peer-reviewed journal. This is index journal in this and this database. This journal is indexed, right? So this is the editorial board. This is the way of review of paper review, peer review process. These are, not authentic. I mean, some misleading information is given, right? And sometimes they take money also for getting the uh, for publishing the research paper. And in the very beginning, at the same time of submission of the manuscript, that may not be said that one has to pay this amount of money for processing the research paper. That may not be said at the time of uh, submission of the paper. But at the end, when the paper is sent, then they, without going through the proper review process, they charge some money and take from the authors for publication. But at the end, we do not get a credit for this academic credence, effort. So transparency is not there. What is the review, peer review process? Who are the peer reviewers, or what sort of peer review process is taken? All these are not transparently said. They deviate entirely from quality. And that is why finally the author does not get any credit, academic credit, for their research work. And this may be a huge loss to the researcher. As I said, one writes a research paper by putting a lot of efforts. So when you get your research paper published in this sort of journals, you will not get the credit out of it. Your research career, your professional career may be severely affected. Therefore, authors have to ensure that their academic exercise does not go futile. Right? The authors will have to be very, very careful regarding the selection of journal. We should check the history, academic honesty, the policy, the practices that the journal follow, the reputation of the journal. We'll have to check all these things of a particular journal that we choose for publication. After checking for all these things, we'll have to decide to send our research paper uh, for publication in that journal. So it is equally important now for the authors to select the right kind of journal for the paper. So what steps one can take to select a journal for publication? First, I suggest to prepare a list of potential journals. We'll have to find out some of the journals in which our research paper can be published. So firstly, we'll have to prepare a list of potential journals where we can have our research paper published. We can prepare a primary list. What I mean by primary list, in the primary list, we can include those journals which are related to the core area of research. Right? If it is, suppose, population related analysis, demographic analysis, we should find out the journals which are related to demography, which are related to population studies. Right? So primary list should include the journals that are related to the core area of research. If it is agricultural economics, we should list out the journals that publish research works on agricultural field. If it is related to, suppose, environmental economics, we need to identify the journals that are intended towards environmental economics. So the core area of research, the journals which are related to the core area of research should be identified. This primary list may also include journals that are related to the discipline. Say, I said about demography. I said about environmental economics. I said about agricultural economics. These journals are, very specific, that they publish papers on population issues or agricultural issues or environmental issues or so on and so forth. In the second thing that I said, that the journals that are related to the discipline, so these papers you can have also published in your discipline, journals relating to your discipline, say economics, right? So prepare some a list which include the journals that are related to the discipline. Next, the primary list may also include journals that are cited in the paper. While writing the research paper, you have cited some of the previous studies. So see in which paper, journals these papers which you have cited were published. So when you choose the journals uh, from which you have cited some papers, the chance of publication of your research paper will increase. What I mean, in your research paper, you might have cited some of the papers. Look into the papers where these are published. Now you try those journals for your publication. So when you choose these papers, journals, from which you have cited some papers, your chance of having your paper published will increase. You can also prepare a secondary list. This secondary list will include the journals that are related to broad area. Say, I said core area like demography, population studies, or agricultural economics, environmental economics, labor economics. Then the discipline, say economics in a broader way. The broad area, this is what? Social science. So the journals which are related to social science, you can also include in the secondary list. So prepare a list of potential journals where you can have your paper published. Now, a question may come up. How can you know the journals? How can you know the journals to prepare a list? I will come to this point towards the end of my presentation. After identifying a list of journal, then you choose a particular journal. You have got suppose 10, 15 journals in your list. Then you see a particular journal and then go to the official website of that journal, right? And in that website, you see what is the aim and scope of the journal. After going through the aim and scope of the journal in the official website of the journal, you will know whether your paper falls in that particular aim and scope of the journal or not. If you think that your paper matches with the scope and aim of the journal that you are looking for, then you can go ahead. Then see the composition of the editorial board, right? Which personalities are associated with the editing of that research journal. You check that in the user interface. Then again see the guidelines to the authors. What instructions are given to the contributors? See all these things and examine whether transparency is there in those guidelines or not. Is there any hidden element in those guidelines? Check for all these things. Then see the manuscript submission mechanism, how a manuscript has to be submitted, right? Always submit your manuscript with a with an established system of submission, and also see what are the contact information. Is there any official email ID, official telephonic address may also be there, right? So all see all these contact information, and if you are convinced by going through all these information in the user interface of the journal that your journal falls into the aim and scope of the journal, editorial board is credit worthy, there is no hidden element in the uh, journal, transparency is there, manuscript submission mechanism is well and good, right? If you are convinced, then you can go to the next step. See what is the academic rigor of that journal. Go through some of the papers which are already published in that particular journal. Have these papers downloaded. Of course, download those papers which in a way related to your research work, right? And then see what is the academic quality rigor in the already published works. Are the works already published are of good quality or not? You try to see all these things. Academic rigor you can assess by going through some of these things, like say research design, how the research design is framed, what sort of data have been used, right? Does the journal publish, you know, uh, database findings or some qualitative papers? What is the theoretical treatment of the academic already published works? Theoretical framework is strong or not? All these things you examine. Then how the collected data have been treated, analyzed, how the theories are used. All these things you see to uh, convince yourself that this is an academically rich journal. Okay, this is very important because you have done a good quality work and that you want to publish in a good research journal so that your work gets a larger audience. So you'll have to therefore check the academic quality of the works in the already published works of the journal that you have chosen. See again the editorial quality in the already published work. What is the quality of communication? Is there any spelling error, grammatical error, right? If you see that lot of mistakes are there in the journal, in the papers, quality of communication is not good, right? Grammatical, spelling, all these errors are there, then you will have to give a second thought whether to select that particular journal for publication or not. So quality of communication of the already published works you need to check. And also see how the abstract is written, right? All these things actually demonstrate what is the quality of editing of the journal, how the entire paper is authored, what is the quality of language, what is the quality of communication, how the abstract is written, right? All these things you need to look into. And also you check how the tables and figures uh, presented. Are the tables presented properly? Are the figures presented properly? All these things actually show the editorial quality. So you have to be convinced that this journal considers a lot of effort in maintaining the editorial quality. Then check the peer review process, right? Try to publish your work only in peer reviewed journals. Only then you will get the credit, academic credit of your uh, research paper. So check what is the peer review process of that particular journal. What is the type of review, right? Is it a blind peer review journal or not? That you see what is the mechanism of uh, you know review process. What are the criteria used for review? How much time is taken for review? Some journals say that submit the paper today and have it published within 2 days, within 7 days, right? That sort of promise is made. So when you have uh, very quick uh, publication just after submission, you should have a doubt because it takes a bit of time to properly review a particular research paper. So, how much time a paper takes, a journal takes to have the research review process completed? Then, what is the mechanism of resubmission of the paper? I mean, first you have submitted the paper and then it was sent to the reviewers, then reviewers have given some comments. How these comments should be sent to you, how you will uh, modify these, and through what way again you will resubmit the uh, revised version of your paper. All these things you need to check before submitting your manuscript for publication. Then also see the transparency of copyright policies. Is it transparent that copyright is also given to the author? Sometimes it is, it is actually, it has to be there in the user interface. Who will have the copyright? Some journals keep the entire copyright uh, over the publication, and some journals give copyright to the author as well. So is there transparency in the copyright policy or not? Check that also in the user interface of the journal. Impact factor. Impact factor can be an indicator of reputation based on citation of the published works and based on the number of publication, different following different ways impact factor is calculated. And journals having high impact factor are considered to be qualitatively better, and therefore you can choose the journals having high impact factor. But sometimes impact factors may be spurious. You do not have any way to know whether the impact factor that is claimed by a journal is true or not. Okay, sometimes spurious impact factor may be said. Therefore, better to consider the relevance of your paper consider whether your research paper falls in under the aim and scope of the journal or not. Better consider what is the academic rigor of the papers that have been published in that particular journal. Rather than thinking about the impact factor, therefore, you can see the academic rigor. If the academic rigor of the published works are very high, definitely it will be having high impact factor. These papers would be definitely cited in other papers. So just do not look into the impact factor. This is my personal opinion. Um, and you have to go through the academic quality of the published papers, because I believe that if quality of the publication is good, definitely that paper would be cited by others. So better to consider academic rigor of the paper. Then another thing that we can look into is the indexing. Good quality journals are indexed in major databases, right? Say Scopus, Web of Science, right? And some other databases are also there. So quality journals are indexed in major databases. So choose the index journals. Okay? I said that some predatory journals are there. Some journals claim that these are indexed in different databases. Say a journal may say that the journal is indexed in Scopus. The journal is indexed in Web of Science. That may be claimed by a journal. But don't just look into the claim of the journal. You do something to check whether actually that particular journal is indexed in the stated database or not. That is why I say that beware of questionable journals. I repeat, some journals may say that the journal is indexed in Scopus, but actually the journal may not be indexed in Scopus database. Some journals may say that it has ISSN number, but actually that ISSN number may be invalid, right? Therefore, don't just see or consider the claims made by the journal. You check whether the journal is actually indexed in that particular database or not, whether the claimed ISSN is true or not. Having ISSN is not difficult today. One can have, a publishing house can have that ISSN number, but that therefore we'll have to check whether that ISSN number is valid or not. To have the right kind of credential for your academic publication, see whether whether the journal chosen is listed in UGC care. Right? Only the journals that are included in UGC care list, these journals are given academic credit. Therefore, we'll have to see, is the journal chosen included in that list or not. This UGC care has two lists, list 1, list 2. List 2 includes some of the journals that are indexed in Scopus or Web of Science, these databases. Some journals are there which are not indexed in Scopus or Web of Science, but these are considered by UGC as quality journals. These are listed in list 1. So list 2 are list 2 includes the journals which are indexed in Scopus and Web Science. The other journals which UGC believes to be of high quality, these are uh, listed in list 1. I said that we'll have to prepare a list of journals. How can we know which are the potential journals? How can we search all these potential journals? I suggest a very simple way for that. You open an account in the UGC Care, that official journal, or journal website. I mean, let me show you. So this is the website, ugccare.university, Uni Pune, Savitribai Phule University that maintains this. So in that, you just Google it, UGC Care Journal, then you will get this website, ugccare.unipune.ac.in. So all that you need is to have one login account. You create an account by giving a user ID and then password. And when you log in, you will get this kind of a window. So here you will have two things: UGC Care list group 1 that I said as list 1, and then UGC Care list group 2. Is it visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then just see here, UGC Care list 1. I have clicked there. All right. Then go for search. Now what we can do, select. You can select by title. If you know a particular journal, the title of the paper, a journal, if you know, then you can click title and write the name of the journal here and then press search. If you do not know the titles of the journal, then by subject you search subject and then say, okay, let me take economics. Search. See, these journals have come up. All right. And see now all these journals. And by looking at the names of the journals, you make a list that this may be a potential journal. All right. This journal is related, may be related to my core issue of research. This journal may be related to my core discipline. This journal may have similar aim and scope. So considering all these things, you can prepare a list. And then after preparing that list, you go to the official website of that particular journal. So you are convinced now that, say, for example, this view. So who is the publisher? You can know it. Who is the publisher? What is the ISSN number? What is the discipline? What is the subject? Right? What is the coverage of UGC Care? Is the journal has coverage up to now or not. All these things you can know here. So now you are convinced that this is a journal which is um, considered as a good quality journal by UGC. You are convinced. So now you can go to the official website of this journal and see the things that I said, academic rigor, all the other things that I have already explained. And then you compare those publications which are already published in that particular journal with your paper. If you think that my paper is similar, or this is similar to the quality of the papers that have already been published, now you can send the paper to that particular journal. So this is from list 1. Then see, this is list 2. Click here. So you will find this Web of Science, Arts and Humanities, Science Citation Index, Social Science Citation Index. So in 3 different categories, these are given. And the next, Scopus. This is the second indexing database. Let me take Scopus. Suppose a journal says that the journal is indexed in Scopus, right? You have chosen a particular journal which claims that this is included in Scopus database. You will now have to check it. Click here. Without going through the UGC care, you can directly log into the Scopus database also. That website you can also directly go through. So I have gone through the UGC care database, and that has linked again to the Scopus website. Same is the principle here. If you have come to know about a particular journal and the journal claims that this is included in the Scopus database, now check whether this is actually present in the included in the Scopus database or not. Click here. If you know the title, write the title here. If you know the ISSN of the journal, write the ISSN here, and then find source. And then it will be said whether the journal is included in the Scopus database or not, whether it has coverage up to present or not. All these things would be there in the next window. Okay, and when you are convinced that this journal is included in the Scopus database, you go for submission of your manuscript. So these are the preliminary things that you need to do before you submit your manuscript for publication. Right? We'll have to put our effort in both stages. In the preparation of the manuscript, we'll have to put our effort. And again, we'll have to put our effort in having our paper published also, in selecting a journal also. We'll have to remember that we have put lot of time, lot of effort, lot of energy, maybe money also, to prepare a research paper. So these all efforts should not go futile. Therefore, equally we'll have to take care so that our research paper gets published in a good quality journal, and for that publication we do get the appropriate academic credential. If you do not get that academic credential, your academic career, your professional career may be seriously affected. Therefore, we'll have to uh, take care in selecting the journal. With this, I have come to the end of my deliberation. I wish you good luck, and also I thank all of you for your patient hearing, and I also thank the organizers of this workshop for having me here and giving me an opportunity to talk to you. Thank you very much. Over to the organizers.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful deliberation. Uh, Sir, in his deliberation, highlighted the fundamentals of preparation and publication of research papers. He also highlighted how a research paper is a scientific effort to finding a solution to research problem and which adds to the existing body of knowledge through some procedures. Sir also went on to differentiate between how a research paper is different from an article based on the components, and also what methodology we need to follow while writing a research papers. And he also further the basic thing which we are talking about today was the public how to basically select a journal. Sir also talked at how can we prepare a list of potential journals and include it in a primary and secondary list, and how we also need to be careful about selecting the user interface of the journal, and peer review and transparency and impact factor, how these are important. And impact factor is important, but also is the academic rigor of the journal. He also said how under the parameter indexing we can look into while selecting a journal for publication. And for academic credentials, we need to ensure that the journals are listed in the UGC care list. Thank you, sir, for practically showing us the participants how to find a journal in the UGC care list and Scopus list. Now I open the house for discussion or any questions which the participants might have. I have a few questions myself, but I will reserve it for the later half. Participants, over to you. If you have any questions, you can type it in the chat box or you can raise your hand and ask sir directly. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Participants, the house is now open for discussion. Do we have any questions? If no one has any question, Amar, sir, can I ask?
Sure.
Sir, the first question is regarding the coverage. Sometimes we notice that we have published a paper after going through all the process you have said how to select a journal, and for some reason it gets discontinued later on. In that case, sir, what happens to our academic credentials? And
Okay.
sir, yeah, some open access, they charge a very low amount. In that case, how do we ensure that those journals are authentic?
This is a very common problem that we very commonly encounter. Uh, I have also faced these sort of questions earlier uh, when I go to take some interview and all. Uh, See, normally what uh, we see that whether at the time of publication of the paper was the journal under the coverage of Scopus or Web of Science or not. At the time of publication of the journal, the paper, that journal should have Scopus or Web of Science, whatever be coverage. So coverage should be continued up to the time of publication. Afterwards, the journal may be discontinued from the Scopus database. Suppose the paper got published in 2021 August, and the journal has been discontinued from 2021 December. So in that case, you will get the credential, because at the time of publication of your paper, that journal was included in the Scopus database. Right. If at the later phase the journal is discontinued, you will get the credential. You will get the credit for that, because at the time of your publication, the journal was included in the Scopus database. Later on, it may be discontinued. This is number one. So while at the time of submission of your paper, what thing that you can see, you can do, that you can see whether at that time the journal is included in the Scopus database or not. So if you know that the journal at that moment of submission is included in the database, you can submit. But at the time of publication, if it is discontinued, then you are helpless, right? You do not know whether at that time it would be discontinued or not, because very frequently, as and when required, this is not, discontinued. I mean, there is a time lag in discontinuing a journal from the Scopus database. So at the time of submission, that paper journal may be included in the Scopus database, but at the time of publication, that may not be. So in that case, I think you'll be helpless.
Okay, sir. Thank you. That answers my question. And my second question is, sometimes some authentic journal, how do you check the authenticity if some open access journal charge a meager amount for the maintenance?
See, that is what I said by transparency. See, that should be there in the journal website, that article processing search fee is this much. That has to be mentioned in the user interface of the journal. But sometimes some journals charge a very high amount for the publication. And the predatory journals are defined in that way, that transparency is not there, right? They publish almost instantly whatever you submit. And at the time of submission of the manuscript, what amount is required to be paid, that is not mentioned. Only after the article submission that is communicated to the author. If you are asked to pay some amount of money towards publication of your paper, then again you will have to check whether this journal is included in the delisted list of journals or not. If it is still under the if it is considered as a considered or quality journal or not, if it is included in the cloned category, if it is included in the rejected journal list, you check all these things. If the journal claims some amount of money for your publication, give a second thought again whether you will get the right kind of credential for that paper publication or not. Check again whether this is still considered in the UGC care list or not. Is it included in the rejected list? Is it included in the cloned journal list? all these things you check. And if you are convinced that still this journal is considered, you will get the right kind of credit for that publication. And if the amount is bearable to you, then you can go.
Thank you, sir. We are actually running out of time for the first session, but I just want to quickly ask one more question to you. The thing is here, sir, sometimes it happens we send a article, I mean a research paper to a particular journal of credit, but it happens so that the entire review process article published, and
Dr. Goswami, I'm sorry to say, your voice is cracked. I'm not getting your voice properly. Would you kindly repeat?
Sir, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing what I was asking is sometimes we send a paper to a journal of credit and we know that we have checked all the A to Z checklist box and then we send the paper. But the journal takes too long for our research work to get published. And it might happen that our research work might become irrelevant or we might not be able to send to some other papers. In those cases, how can we prohibit that? I mean, how can we let that not happen and get it, because sometimes some journal don't want us to send the same work to different journals and it might be considered plagiarized or something like that. How do we prohibit that, sir?
Yeah, that is what I said in my presentation, that time taken for review. All right. That has to be mentioned in the user interface, that normally the paper requires this month, or say 1 year or 2 months, 3 months, whatever, right, for completing the entire peer review process. That has to be there in the user interface. If you have submitted a paper, then the journal has taken too much time beyond your expectation, then perhaps you can write few mails, right? And if still you do not get any acceptable kind of reply, then after sending 4 or 5 mails, which is with an interval, of course, I think you can withdraw the paper. And once you withdraw the paper from the system, I think you can resubmit it, because this is the copyright is given on the published item. Your paper has not been published. So if it is not published, then the copyright is not given to them. Copyright is given only on the published item. It has not been published, so copyright is not there. So you can write few mails and you can say that if it is not replied, eventually I will withdraw the paper, and wait for some time. Don't just immediately withdraw the paper. Take some sufficient amount of time, and then if you are convinced that it has taken time beyond your expectation, then you can withdraw the paper and take some time to select the next journal, and then you can go with it. Because it is your academic effort, you have to have the credit of it. So it's meaningless to put the paper for longer period of time, which will make your research findings also irrelevant.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for answering my questions. I can see a raised hand from Madam Dipali. Ma'am, would you please go ahead with your question? Dipali, ma'am, you can go ahead with your question. Dipali Vaishya, ma'am, I can see you have raised your hand. You can go ahead with your question if you have any. Or you can type it in the chat box. We will take up the question. Dipali, ma'am, are you there? I think there might be some connectivity issue on her end, sir. All right. If you have any questions, we can put it up, and we will try to put it up with Mahanta sir if he has. Okay. Okay. I get it, ma'am. Thank you. All right. So if none of the participants have any questions, I'm exceptionally sorry about my camera is not working fine right now. I'd have loved to put it on, but yes, as we come to the close of this session, I would like to thank Dr. Amarjyoti Bahona sir for his patience and time in, presenting to us and then answering all the questions. I would also like to thank the participants who have been present today. And with these few words, I declare this session has come to an end. But participants, kindly wait for a moment. We have a session code for you. Mahanta sir, thank you so much for joining us today and enlightening with your kind words.
Thank you. From my side also, I would once again like to thank you and other coordinator, and for that matter, entire Bahona College for having me here and giving me an opportunity to interact with this wonderful galaxy of research workers. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We hope to hear from you again. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. For the participants, we have a session code. I would like to make a few announcements here. We have been tracking your attendance. Kindly join the session at the beginning and try to stay towards the end. We can see that some people are joining in just now. We are very strict with the attendance. So kindly be on time every day, 10 minutes for every session. And we will declare the session code at the beginning and at the end. And we were not going to put up any of the session code in WhatsApp group. So kindly be present in the online sessions. And session code for this session was BIKE, B-I-K-E, BIKE. I repeat, it's B-I-K-E, BIKE. Kindly be present in all the session and give your feedbacks. And please consider your assignments, feedbacks, and attendance to be important, as this will be collected and be considered for your certificates. Thank you. Okay, Gitima ma'am, I'm writing it. B-I, it's all right. B-I-K-E, bike. All right. So please, I'm requesting all of you to be present in the sessions. And if you are finding any difficulty in joining the Google Classroom, please send us your email. We will manually add you. Okay. And please complete your assignments on time, and please be join the classes on time, as it will be considered for the final evaluation. Thank you. And we will see you at 12:30. Please join 10 minutes earlier. Thank you.